What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And this is a first for me, and I think you guys are going to get something out of this. Go ahead, introduce yourself, man, who you are and what you got going on.
What's up, Rascal? Thank you for having me first and foremost. I'm Hector Bravo. Yeah, I started that YouTube channel a couple months back, that prison guard, and that that came about because, after 16 years, I resigned. I resigned from the department. I resigned as a lieutenant. Politics got too crazy, man. I bounced.
Hmm. So so kind of the bare basics, right? When did you become a SEAL?
In the year 2006, I touched down at the academy in Stockton. Actually, they were running two simultaneous academies in November 27, 2006.
Okay. And I see behind you, right, 11B infantry.
Oh,
So maybe whatever you're comfortable sharing a little bit of your background before becoming a SEAL.
yeah, for sure, dude. Well, I grew up in Brawley, California, probably the most southern California you can get, man. Right on the border of Mexico, Mexicali.
Okay.
And small town, man, a lot of dope, a lot of getting in trouble, a lot of drinking. There's nothing to do. It's a small town. And I figured my only way out was to join the army, join the military, right? And I wanted to go infantry, so the Marine Corps or the Army. Little story behind that. I ended up going with the Army, right?
Okay.
And 9/11 had already happened, dude. It had
Mm,
already kicked off. The Twin Towers fell down, and the war drums were beating for America at that time, man.
yeah.
And went infantry, and found myself in Iraq in 2004, dude. Did 13 months there as a grunt, right on the front lines.
Right.
That was the beginning of the guerrilla warfare, dude. So roadside bombs, ambushes, car bombs. The car bombs were devastating, man. Extremely devastating. And you can't defend yourself against any of that. It's just
Yeah.
boom, you get hit. You're constantly getting hit. Mortars, rockets, and then I came back in '05, had a bank account full of money, dealing with PTSD, the trauma,
Yeah.
went back to the hometown that I was telling you about. So I got in trouble. I hit it hard for a year 2005, and I became a CEO in '06, man, by chance, by luck. So it was my goal.
Okay. Uh, Now I'm curious, and I did an interview a while back, man, with the homeboy of mine, Jeff, who grew up in the neighborhood and then went on to the service and did many years and many tours and stuff. So I'm sure there's some commonality there. But you talk about the PTSD and whatnot, and this is my first ever conversation with the former CO. But I've talked to a lot of veterans, right, and
Yeah.
both in my family and outside, and so yeah, that's I hear you. That's not a
This is my
very common.
first this is my second conversation with like former northerner, man. Second one, there was none down south when I was in the department.
Right, I bet. Right, I bet. Um, so so you had reached out around a particular video that I'd done, right?
Yeah.
I did a video just a couple days ago around the Bulldogs, right, and the integration of the Bulldogs into the system. And I know you had some kind of thoughts from your perspective that you wanted to share.
Yeah, dude. So like that, there was a lot of reasons why I left the department. A lot, man. It was a buildup. It wasn't like one day I woke up and hey, I don't like this. My boss sucks. I'm out. It was a lot of me pushing the line behind the scenes, right? Going against the grain, as you can say, because I
Okay.
didn't agree. I didn't agree. I didn't agree with what was happening, and one of the SNY and the GP mixing them, like that was kind of just common sense, man. That's just basic common sense. So luckily, I was out recently because that Fresno Bulldog integration, yeah, it was happening. So I caught the tail end. There was rumors that Donovan that we were, because that's why I ended up Donovan.
Mhm.
There was rumors that they were gonna make a whole yard Bulldogs, and I'm like, nah, please, right? Because I didn't know about Bulldogs. I've gathered more since I've been talking to individuals. But I just heard they fight, they get off on everybody, including themselves. And I'm like, nah, nah. Because Donovan is a beast, man. You got all the programs. You got EOP, you got developmental disability, you got SNY, you got GP, you got level 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right.
That's why that prison is so jacked up. I'm like, no, don't bring a whole full yard full of bulldogs. We don't need that. Right? Because I was trying to go to work, do my job, and go home, but you
Mhm.
can't with what administration and Sacramento and headquarters created. The inmates can't even program, and the cops can't even do their job, man. It ain't. when you were in, it ain't like that no more, by far. And yeah, people reaching out to me about their integrations at their prisons with the Bulldogs. They were getting, sometimes they got the upper hand, but they were getting mopped up, dude. Like what, 50, 100 on 12? Not
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. That's a no-win situation. At some point, it's not a matter of who's toughest or who's this or who's that, but at some point, it's just a numbers game. You know what I
Right.
mean? You can be the most savage warrior in the world, right? But 2 on 10, 2 on 15, like you said, 12 on 50, this ain't gonna play out well for you. You know what I mean?
No.
Um, so this integration thing, it's interesting. I want to explore that because like I said in that video, when I first heard about it, I was against it, right? I felt like from my vantage point, I can't speak for others, but I know there's some that feel the same. It was a deliberate response from Sacramento, right? From the government in, okay, fine. If we gotta let you guys out the shoe, right? And now you
Yeah.
guys are saying, you guys meaning the leadership of prison organizations, right? We gotta let you guys out the shoe. You guys are now in this end of hostilities, and it actually seems to be working, right? There really isn't, north-south violence and interracial violence really the way that CDC had always said there would be, right? I come from the era of we're the worst of the worst, so
Right.
I'm I'm sitting in a bay before you even became a SEAL, right? But I'm sitting in Pelican Bay and we're watching essentially commercials, just propaganda reels that are posed as news programs, but it's
Mm,
not news. It's and this big riot at CDC, and they have a female CO who was assaulted by somebody in the past, and how it destroyed her life, and all the convicts do is plot on how to kill COs all the time, and now there's those of us in the bay in the shoe, and we're puppet masters, and if you let us out, God, it's gonna be war, right? The world is gonna end because we're the
right.
worst of the worst. And obviously the shoe gets emptied. That doesn't happen, right? So it felt like this integration was,
Wow.
if you guys don't want to fight, we'll find a way to make you guys get off in order to put people back in the shoe. That's kind of how it seems. So they're like, okay, fine, we're gonna take all these SNY cats and all these GP cats. Let's see if you can, the end of hostilities goes that far, right?
Man.
What was the sentiment on your guy? And I know you can't speak for Sacramento. Obviously, it wasn't your call, but that's how a lot of us felt.
Uh,
On the outside looking in. How did you guys feel?
I'm tripping out right now when everything you said because I've talked to many people and sometimes you gather things. Well, actually, you do gather things because this person says this, you're thinking this, and it all adds up to the same thing.
Yeah,
That just by hearing what you just said, man, Jesus. Um, the same thing, right? But this is why I came out to speak. Like, hey, we were the grunts on the soul. We were the in the trenches, man. We ain't. I had to be a voice, and a lot of people watching can be like, thank God we have a voice now because you're right. Sacramento, the way they painted everything, man. To include the heavies locked up in the shoe. And I didn't know your background. I didn't know you were up there, so you got that front row seat. And it was in my mind, why are you gonna let them out when they did let them out,
mhm.
right? And I don't go much into detail on my channel because I ain't trying to get got, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But I did have serious regular conversations with some very important people,
Oh, I'm
right?
sure. Yeah.
And that was exactly said that because they were catching wind about the Bulldogs. And he kind of looked at me. I kind of because I was able to converse with these dudes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, man. I know it's not gonna work. I know. I said, this is what I think. I told him this. I told him the same thing you just said. I said, I think they're gonna do this as a way to say, okay, you guys say you can get along, we'll see. And another thing, the SNY program was a failure, so we're gonna show them. We're gonna show them, right? And he looked at me and he goes, man, it's the 90s all over again. It's
Mm.
the 90s all over again. And he didn't seem like it wasn't he it's a bad position for everybody. He wasn't thrilled, he wasn't excited. He was just like, man, what's going on here? This is
Yeah.
messed up.
And what kind of, so if you could talk about a little bit from your perspective, right? What position that puts you in, right? What position that puts the COs in, and um, yeah, just how, what's that do for you, right? When CDC says this is who we're gonna, and whether it's the Bulldogs
Right.
or just the integration, just maybe even taking it kind of a step back from that specific group, and just the early days of SNY and GP coming, there's non-designated program facilities. Kind of what was that like from your vantage point?
So let me tell you the two, right? So there was Alpha Yard at RJD, okay? And by then I think I was a sergeant or lieutenant. I was a lieutenant by then, but on Alpha Yard, right? What does it do to us? It puts us in a horrible spot that's going to get us attacked, which ended up happening, right? The Southsiders on A Yard, because A Yard and B Yard had flipped. At that point, A Yard was GP. You had the races in there. You had Southsiders, whites, the blacks, right? So two of the buildings were EOP. So what they did was they said all EOP, enhanced outpatient, the JCAT,
Right.
the mentally ill that take medication and stuff. So they started bringing SNY inmates onto those EOP yards. They actually made the EOP program non-designated,
Right.
meaning, and there was GP inmates that were in the EOP program, SNY inmates in the EOP program,
Mhm.
and dude, they were getting off on them. They were getting off on them. They were getting off on them. They were but and I'm telling you, this is you're gonna learn something here. Sacramento, the wardens were so content on making themselves look good to Sacramento. Hey, we're making it work. We're making it
Mhm.
work. That even though dudes were getting sliced, dudes were getting diced, dudes were getting stuck, in order to make it look like nothing was happening, they weren't locking the dudes up in the ADSEG in the hole.
Mhm.
They were just, hey, everything's cool, everything's cool. Boy, nothing was cool. Nothing was cool because the Southsiders were getting very fed up. And I saw the brewing, and I'm like telling the cops, I was on Delta Yard, right across the way from Alpha Yard, and I had a meeting with the yard staff, with the staff. I said, "Hey, they're gonna hit us next." What? Well, how do you know that, LT? I said, "Look, man, look what's happening. They're going off on each other. Ain't nothing happened. They're not getting the results they want."
Mhm.
At that time, I do believe the Southerners had orders. You have 72 hours to get off the yard,
Right.
right? And there's no secrets in CDCR, man. We know everything. We know who's who.
Right.
We know what's what. We know who's dealing. We know it. We let a lot slide because we ain't trying to trip. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we're kicking back. But you heard that. Hey, these dudes have like 48 hours to. It started at 72 hours. It hit the 48-hour mark. Now we're getting to the 24 hour. I told the cops, hey, this is it. Well, how do you know? I said, watch, wait, be ready. Don't get caught slipping, right? Don't get caught slipping. It was a Sunday, man. It was a Sunday. I worked a double shift from 6 in the morning to 22. Staff assaults all day long. Every time the door cracked, the Southerners took flight.
Mhm.
Uh, I can't. They didn't have weapons, or they didn't use weapons. Thankfully, they could have. There's nothing saying they
Right.
shouldn't have. Uh, and the thing about Donovan, right? I told you that place is wild. They don't stop. You don't shut down the program. The program doesn't get stopped. You can literally kill a cop on that yard, and they're gonna walk you to
Wow.
to the pill line, man. I couldn't stomach it anymore.
Mhm.
So self feeding.
And if we could pause right there for a second, because I want to, what you're saying is important, right? So before my time in prison, right? You hear the era in which somebody can get killed on the yard, and maybe program shut down till lunch, and then you're back to normal program, right? And then that era stopped, where then it seemed the philosophy of CDC was any violence you're slammed. And so in particular with intergroup violence, right? If northerners in the woods get off or whatever, right? But also even removals, right? If you shed blood, if somebody gets whacked, you're not gonna come out for at least a few days, right? You might be down for a week. if two groups get off on each other, oh, you ain't coming out for months. So that's a wrap,
Right.
right? And which led to tensions and anxiety and pushback on our end, kind of our end meaning sort of the convict end towards COs. Hey, why are we still slammed? What's going on? Let it, you know. But now what you're talking about is like a return to the old days. So in my time, I can't imagine a situation in which a door pops, a convict, Southside or whoever, right, takes off on the CO, and then there's movement
Movement.
still that day, right? Like that would not have happened when I was in there. So that's interesting.
It's not cool, man. It's not cool. Like because because they hold. I'm like an all or nothing type of guy, right? And it's not cool because the rules on our end have gotten really stricter, man. You know, back in the day, the green were probably doing whatever they wanted, right,
Mhm.
and getting away with a lot.
Oh yeah,
Well, that's not the case anymore, right? So, like, hey, the Southsiders are gonna get off, right? And I'm not trying to act hard or anything, but at least if we're gonna get off, we're all gonna get off. Let us all get off. But it's like
mm,
our hands are tied behind our back, right? So it's not like we can't do that extra to send a message to say, not that we would, or you know what I'm talking
right.
about, but it,
Hypothetically, right.
right? But it's like it's not. It's like, hey, we're getting, and understandably so, man. It's a really bad position. Like we're taking L's. We're taking L's. The whole everybody's taking L's right here. The only people that are getting W's that are in their mind think they're getting W's are the wardens, the administration, the captains.
Right.
So
So what you're saying validates what a lot of, and in that era, a lot of family members were reaching out and saying, "Hey, this stuff's not getting attention,
mhm.
right? The the public narrative is integration's going pretty good. There's a few skirmishes here and there, but then I'm talking to people that are like, hey, my loved one, in fact, that Donovan, my loved one went to Donovan. They started integrating the yard. Um, he got off. They took him off the yard for 24 hours, put him back on the yard. He got stabbed. They took him off the yard
Mm,
for 24 hours or 72
mm.
hours, I think that time, put him back on the same yard where he was a GP guy being pushed into integrated, S&Y action. And he'd been down decades. His date was coming up. And
Facts.
he's like, what do you want me
Yeah.
to do? And she goes, I'm not. And there was some question about, are people exaggerating? Is,
No.
is it really that bad? But what you're saying is, yeah, it was that bad and worse.
Facts. Facts. Worse. And I'll give you an example of that. A good, clear example. Because blue and green mindset mentality is, hey, you're not gonna have punks in either one, right? You're gonna have your solid dudes that are stand for a cause, dudes that stand for righteous stuff, right? So there was other people that were standing up. People were doing it or pushing back against administration. Everybody was doing it in their own different little way. I
Mm,
was pretty blunt about it, right? It didn't get me very far, but on Echo Facility was the new and improved non-designated. Come look at all these dogs, these ponies,
right,
the painted buildings. The majority were SNY. Either way, it's a non-designated. Either
right,
way, everybody's deemed no good on that facility.
right,
So you're getting GP Sureños off of the bus, and like you stated in all your videos, ain't nobody gonna say, "Hey, sir, ACO, I can't go over there."
right,
They're just simply not gonna do it. We knew that.
right,
So there was a female lieutenant. She's a captain now. I got nothing bad to say about her. She was cool. She was fair, and she was a lieutenant on Echo Facility. They bring a Southsider, goes, he takes off. Boom, smashes the dude, smashes the first weirdo he sees, right? The guy looks odd to me, I'm gonna take off on him.
right. Just,
Goes to the holding cell in the program. Technically, there was no serious bodily injury. Technically, there was no weapon involved. So automatically, that's not a chewable offense. But the safety concerns, right? Like clearly,
right.
this guy presents a danger. She attempts to lock him up. The AW of that yard says, no, put him back. She's like,
AW
huh?
meaning assistant warden,
Associate warden,
associate warden. Yeah, yeah.
right? And kind of like, And I want to say that dude was cool because for the most part, but you know when people play the fence on both sides, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
so put him. He said put him back. Like what? Which then the thought process, okay, well he didn't do nothing chewable. I'm gonna put him back. The dude straight up saying, "You put me back, I'm gonna smash the next guy."
Of course. He already
Go,
showed you that.
goes over there, smashes the second homie. Boom, comes back to the holding cell. She's like, "I'm locking him up. I'm locking him up." The AW tells him no, put him back. And now everybody is like, right? And this was constant. This is one example, but it happened hundreds,
Right.
probably thousands of times, but at least 500, right? Nah, put him back. No, put him back. And then, like I said, people find a way to fight back. She's like, okay, I'm going to send you an email right now telling me that for the third time, you told me to send them back. Oh, why you got to do all that? You don't trust me? Because that's their get down. They'll tell you verbally to do something. You know, by then they're gone. They're long gone and they deny.
Gotcha. So he doesn't want the paper trail.
That's all of them, man. That's all of them. That's their get down. And I'm here to say it.
Right.
So when you back them up into a corner like that, right, and they're like, okay, lock them up.
Mm.
But that's it, dude. It's fucked up.
You know, the guys on the yard that are getting attacked are being in a bad spot, right? Because you guys keep putting somebody out there that's not gonna rock with them, regardless. It's not gonna happen, right? So those folks are being put in danger because now here comes a torpedo.
Right.
And the first, like you said, the first one is gonna get it's gonna get it. You know, but it's a no-win situation. Those dudes are getting attacked for no reason, really, right? They're on the yard that they're told to be on, and they're programming. And here comes this guy who's like, "No, I don't want to kick it here, so I'm taking flight," right? And that guy is like, "Hey, what do I have to do to show you I don't want to be on this yard?" But then you guys are in a bind. It sounds like, "Oh, there's not going to be too many times you put me back on that yard before I take off on you."
Easy.
Right? Like
Without
my point is made, but I'm looking at you as the CO. You're not getting my point, so I'm gonna prove it directly to you, right? I bet if I take off on your ass, you guys are gonna lock me up, right? I'm probably gonna get beat up and shit. I'm gonna get some special treatment, but
right. So what 100%, bro. That goes without saying. That goes without saying. And it was so, man, I'm glad I'm out. I'm glad I'm out. I feel bad for the ones that are still dealing with it, right? But A yard, Alpha yard, the non-designated. This was a solid lieutenant. He mentored me. He mentored me as I came up, right? And solid dude. Dude had the wits, he had the gift of gab, and he had the skill set, right? A GP white inmate, I believe, like a shoe kick out type dude. Wasn't quite in a leadership position, but he was a somebody, right? He was about the business for sure. Gets kicked out of ADSEG. The dude is in handcuffs, right? They pull up to the plaza gate on Alpha Yard. The white inmate starts telling the officer, "I'm not gonna be on this yard. As soon as you take these handcuffs off me, I'm going off on you."
mm,
So the cop was like, maybe he felt bad, right? He was a youngster cop. He's like, try to give him a little heads up. So the cop is like, "Oh man, like,
hey, that's scary, right? I would imagine for some COs that you got to do cuffed up, and he's telling you when you take these cuffs off, fool, I'm gonna get on your helmet.
well, the cops did the good thing, the right thing. They did the good thing, right? I told you, Paulus, everything has gotten so like by the book, right? So tells the sergeant, tells the lieutenant, that good solid lieutenant comes out. Hey, what's up, man? You know, hollering. ALT, like, no disrespect, no disrespect. But I just told your cop, and now I'm telling you that as soon as these handcuffs come off, I'm taking off on you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hold up, right? So like he's serious, dead serious. So there was a female captain. She was trash too, man. She was garbage. He goes into the office. She would hold a lot of vendettas and vindictiveness. He goes and says, hey, captain, hey, ma'am, there's an inmate out here. He just got kicked out of ADSEG. He's saying that once we take off the handcuffs, he's gonna go off on the cop. She looked at him and said, "What? Are you scared, Lieutenant?" So he's like, okay. Man, he said in his head, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna bring this inmate in here into this office right now.
Right.
Take off these
the cuffs off in here.
Take off the cuffs right now because hey, why not? Let's do it. That's right. What I'm saying. Let's do it. Right? Let's all get down. If that's what they want to do, let's all do it. Right? And nah. So of course he did the right thing. But we were doing the right thing. Lieutenants, sergeants, officers. He relocked them up, put them back in ADSEG, but she made his life a living hell, saying, I want you to give me a threat assessment, a full lengthy page report of why you locked that guy back up. And he knows policy. He's like, no, ma'am, it doesn't require a threat assessment. He made a direct threat to a cop.
Mm.
Um, no, I want you to do a threat assessment. Just to, it
Right.
was bad. It was bad, dude.
Do you think the fact that they can kind of just isolate the Bulldogs, right? And it's the Bulldogs, it's a couple new flowers. I'm sure it's a couple of other people that can program with the Bulldogs, but are not in favor with the leadership of the North or the South. Uh, do you think that's why they're pulling back on the integration of them? Because they can say, hey, at least it's just this one group, right? It's not integration of SNY and GP did not fail, but integration of the Bulldogs is failing. Is that a kind of fair way to look at it, or no?
This is it, man. I'm not gonna say I learned early on, but I did 16 years in the department, right? But I learned probably around year 9, which is kind of late in the game. I learned that administration are liars. Liars go back on their word, right? They're liars, man, and that's crazy because they accuse us of being liars. So, and they love to make you do their dirty work and clean their hands about it. But I was good, man. I used to document, and I used to like move around the chessboard good. This is what I think happened. I think barely, because there's a certain prison in Central Valley that did this with the Bulldogs, and I heard a captain and an AW got got put got in timeout. They got in trouble. What? And then the warden retired, forced to retire. I think those guys started realizing, hey, we're pawns. We're pawns on the chessboard. They're telling us to do this, we do it, and now they're firing us.
Right.
So it's going to take that. It's going to take the higher administration to do the right thing, put their foot down and say, "Oh, you want us to do this? We're documenting everything that it was you, director, whoever, chief deputy director made us do this." When you put the spotlight on them, they don't like it. That's what
Right.
I think happened.
Okay.
Think about it. Like, that's them telling us to do it. We don't want to do it.
Right. No, it makes sense, and I mean, obviously, there's a natural tension between folks doing time and you guys, right? That is just what it is. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's different career paths, right? Um, but there's a similar politics, so to speak. That's operating on your end, right? That's operating on the other side too. It's not unusual for folks in position of power to want to isolate, protect themselves and shield themselves by having others do the dirty work.
Hmm.
And when the cleanup comes, my hands are clean all day. You know what I mean? So all that sounds very familiar, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've heard some CEOs say, hey man, I'm just doing time, you're doing your time here, I'm doing my time here. And while I think that's a bridge too far, right? Like there's a difference between living in prison and working in prison. You know what I mean? So it's not, those are not equal, right? Um, but the idea of it's just business, I think, is shared on both sides. And perhaps both sides get set up sometimes to be in positions they don't want to be in, you know?
Right. I hear what you're saying, like, oh, I'm just doing time, and the inmates used to tell me, oh, well, you get to go home, CO. You get to go home. I got to stay here. But like, this is my truth. My truth is, yeah, well, I did get to leave, right? I did spend 1 week in jail before I became a CO, and that being confined sucks, right? You can't leave. You just can't open the door and go out. I know that feeling now, and not a good one, right? And that was just a week. But like, hey, dude, like the way the department has you is like you're trapped, man. You're chained. Like what I did, how I bounced is rare, extremely rare. No, rarely people do that, but they pay you real good, right? They give you the benefits. That puts food on the table for the family, for the kids, the sports. You can become enveloped in spending that money. It's a vicious cycle, right? You're just working harder, spending more, working harder,
Mm.
spending more. You got the wife nagging at you, you're just spending it. So in a way, yeah, we're leaving the gate. But check this out. I resigned in December. I'm still getting phone calls from lawsuits that I'm in. So it's like you're never really, it's always, man, I just want this to be over.
Now it's funny because you resigned and you left from Donovan, right?
Correct.
So, and this I don't want to make this too long a video, so maybe, but I'd love to have you back, maybe, and maybe we can talk about it actually publicly because of the lawsuits. I don't know,
Yeah, yeah. No,
but
it's
I
still ongoing.
right, I yeah, I've been doing some research and checking out some of the disability stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right, and some of the claims, there's a big class action suit in terms of how folks were treated,
Right.
um, and Donovan was at the center of that,
It was
right?
it.
Speaking of the EOP folks, Donovan was kind of ground zero for these lawsuits.
It was.
So again, maybe that's a conversation for another day. Maybe that's not a public conversation. We'll see where that goes. But
My lawsuits are not involving that, right? Not no
oh,
no
okay.
use of no use of force, no use of force, right? Everything I did was documented and on the up and up, man. So you that disability, yeah, man. We were the first. We made history. The first, not in a good way, the first
Right,
prison to get body worn cameras in
yeah,
in California. That's crazy, man. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's a big far fetched thing.
right.
Um, from what I seen, I came from Centinela, man. They say uh, the blanket statement was prison guards beating up disabled inmates.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in a black and white, in a on a piece of paper, that's what that looks like, right? What it was, well, a lot of them were, inmates claiming to be disabled. These young, solid dudes, ripped, six pack, with a wheelchair, a lower bunk, lower tier chrono, because they
Mhm.
told the doctor, Donovan is the worst of the worst, man. Like the people that cannot program anywhere else, like they don't, they don't have like the there's just some people that don't know that are just awkward, that just pain in the butts, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, fool, you're doing too much. Like, get
Right,
out of here. You're bothering me. Well,
right.
those are those all those guys, man. So, which is crazy. So you got a guy like that manipulating the system to get the lower bunk, lower tier chrono, and the doctors at Donovan. I don't know how they're doctors. I swear, I don't know how they're doctors. It's just a free for all, right? So
Which
is
that's the opposite. It's funny because that's the opposite of how prison was when I was
right.
in.
Well, it went too
You better
far.
break your leg
Mm-mm.
if you want to get a Tylenol, right? There
No.
was literally MTAs that lost their jobs because they were handing out ace bandages, Tylenol, that kind of stuff, putting in for tests and X-rays, and they were like, "Well, you gotta go, lady. Like, what the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah.
So what you're describing is the opposite of how it was when I was in there.
It went too far, man. And I came from Centinela. That was a normal prison. I saw two guys get in a fight, fist fight on Charlie Yard, level 4 SNY EOP. They always claim chest pains. They always, in one incident, you can have a person claiming excessive use of force, chest pains, they got, and safety concerns. I swear, you think I'm joking. That's what they do. That's their get down. So then they go to the TTA,
Mhm.
and the doctors there, they don't know much, they don't know, and they look at them. Oh man, you have a little shiner and you're breathing heavy. You guys are both going out to the hospital 911. I was
Wow.
yelling. I was a sergeant. I'm like, what? If I get in a fight out on the street, they're not taking me to the hospital. They're taking me to jail. And
Right.
they looked at me like I was crazy. It was that I hated that place. It was crazy. So, anyways, disabled inmates, are they really disabled? I just told you. They love to manipulate the system. There were now, yeah, there was people probably missing a leg. That person's clearly disabled, right? Um,
Yeah, because they're talking about folks that in the
and
lawsuit, which I'm sure that's the most extreme cases, right? But they're talking about folks that can't walk, that being dragged up to the second tier. There's in the lawsuit, there's some examples that are pretty extreme, right? And and we know that there are folks that game the system, right? Obviously, uh, uh, we also know that there are COs that are assholes
that's the
and
truth.
get pissed off, and I can picture, I can see in my mind. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but in my mind, I can see how some annoying inmate, right, that's just badgering and always doing paperwork and banging on the door, getting just JCats can get worked over, right? Because some folks don't control their temper and are like, hey, look, the dude's a JCat. And especially if you're on a yard, like a S&Y type yard, where there's not so much regulation of the population by convicts.
Right.
You can kind of do whatever the fuck you want, and you guys got to deal with it. There's, you know,
Yeah, there was force used. There was force used, right? But those allegations of disabled inmates getting beat up, what they don't say, and I've been in lawsuits, other ones, what they don't say is all of that started with a staff assault.
hmm,
So it all started with an inmate battering a cop, man. And I've been like staff assaults, man. Like, hey, these inmates, those inmates are getting off on cops for no reason, for
hmm,
no reason. Or maybe the cop was being an asshole. Maybe I don't know. I wasn't in there, right? But I just came afterwards. I see a bloody nose cop, a
right,
broken jaw, and then I see an inmate. I see an inmate, right? So
right.
that's that, man. It's like, was it happening? There was more to it than what is just portrayed, man. And
Oh, there's always more to it.
a lot of inexperienced cops.
Mhm.
And I came from Centinela. They raised me right. They raised me correct. A lot of people didn't get raised correct in the department.
And we know folks can get out of hand from either angle, right?
Yeah,
I would imagine the us versus them. That's when that kicks in, right? Like you said, you walk up to a scene, you see a CO, he's got a bloody nose. He didn't get that shit by accident, right? And
right.
and so then the kind of, hey, that's my homeboy, right?
But as a supervisor, as a sergeant and a lieutenant, man, this is what also that you guys didn't know, the public didn't know, because we don't do it out in the open. I would snatch youngsters up behind closed doors and just, like rip them a new one, like.
Okay,
So yeah, all that whatever didn't seem right, okay, whatever wasn't ethical or whatever, like, hey, that got handled. That got handled for sure. That got handled. But to understand this, we're never gonna do that in front of the
right,
public, especially in blue. We're not gonna do that.
right. Yeah, yeah. No, you can't discipline your own in front of everybody, make them look weak and that kind of stuff. Sure, it goes
Right.
both ways,
So
right?
yeah, it goes. That's leadership. But
Yeah.
yeah, man. But overall, we weren't always at each other's throat. That's what I'm saying. That's what Sacramento creates.
Mm,
Hey, look at this mess. Look, keep the eyes off us. Look at them. They can't get along. Look at them.
mm,
Fire the cops and lock up the inmates. They can't get along.
right. Mm,
That's not cool.
right. For anybody, you're right. You're right. That doesn't
It
right
does.
because you're who we see. You know what I mean? I can't get at the warden, but if I'm tired of what CDC is doing, I can take it out on the guy that's taking me out of my cell to go to work. You know, uh,
And I never told any inmates, hey, and committee day take off on the warden. I wanted to so bad, man. Like I never verbally said it. Like, hey,
right,
every Thursday the big wigs come through, man.
right,
But man, I never said it verbally. But man,
right,
but yeah, the CDCR screwed up. They made a mess. CDCR made a mess. All right. Now there's ways to address messes, right? And they need to figure out a better way, instead of, hey, you guys do our dirty work and that it's broken. It's a broken system, and
yeah.
I'm all about fixing it or attempting to.
And I think that's a good point to bring this one to an end, man. Hey, so before we go, you had mentioned being raised up, and I found out recently, man, you wrote a book. So you want to plug that, talk about it before we go?
Yeah, dude, I actually wrote a book before I bounced, and the purpose was to kind of school the younger generation, right? It's about respect, a lot about respect, lessons learned the hard ways and stuff that was taught to me. The book is called Operation Yard Recall by Hector Bravo. You can find it on Amazon. But yeah, man, it's about respect, etiquette, prison etiquette, right? Things that a lot of everybody has gone away from, dude.
Okay, that's dope. I'm gonna check it out, and I'll put a
Thank
link
you.
to it in the description of the video.
Appreciate that. Gracias.
Yeah, of course. I've enjoyed talking with you. I really have. I enjoy your channel. The
Likewise.
Prison Guard. Obviously I'm gonna put a link to it in the description, and I encourage people to go check out your content. You talk about all kinds of stuff over there, right? And so I find it all interesting as somebody that's done time to kind of be able to pick the brain of somebody that was on the other side, and so I appreciate you, reaching out and coming on the platform, and I look forward to future conversations, man.
For
Maybe I'll
sure.
go hop over there and
For
and
sure.
hang out with you or whatever.
Cool. No,
So
thank you for having me.
no,
Thank you.
of course, man. So hey, help others move with excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time. Help your community, and as Hector said, man, the prison guard. The system is broken, right? And it takes folks to fix it, and it's gonna take a variety of people. We all got to do our part. But what is the plan? What does fixed look like?
Hmm.
I think, we got to figure out what does it look like when it's fixed, and then folks can figure out what role they can play in getting there. You know,
Yeah.
right now it's chaos. It's just chaos, and that's not good for anybody, man. So